Broadcasting from the Unshackled Studios in Melbourne. This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net. Now here's Tim Wilms.
Hello everybody and welcome to this week's WilmsFront Snapshot News show, back on a Tuesday, the 21st of July 2026. We are live on the WilmsFront YouTube channel. It is 8 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria, and the news headlines are still being dominated by 7 News Spotlight's program on Sunday night, documenting, that's probably the wrong word, following and then slicing together an edit of her British fact-finding mission. Now, the reporter who accompanied her was Liam Bartlett, who has previously done some good spotlight episodes on the mining that is needed in the Democratic Republic of the Congo to build Australia's renewable rollout, and also on transgender detransitioners. But he seemed to revert on this latest episode to his old 60 Minutes persona when he was totally owned by when she was running for governor of Arizona, a former journalist, Carrie Lake, because, well, lots of his questions to Pauline Hanson were loaded, and also to when Rupert Lowe presented, the leader of the Restore Britain party, presented her with his manifesto for mass deportations. When he mentioned Anglo-Saxon countries, he said, Liam Bartlett said, that sounds like white supremacy. And then, of course, when it got to Tommy Robinson, well, he did his most to berate Tommy Robinson on the streets of Luton, Tommy Robinson's hometown, which is undergone an Islamification in the 21st century, berating him on his criminal convictions, and also later said to Pauline Hanson, he lied to you about that he tried to come, that he hadn't previously tried to apply to come to Australia. I already knew that he had tried to apply to do a tour here. I don't know why he told Pauline Hanson that he'd never tried to enter or apply to enter Australia. I don't know, maybe he forgot, but that was turned into a gotcha by Liam Bartlett. But what has caused the most hysteria, consternations, is when, I'll play the full clip for you, when Tommy Robinson asked Pauline Hanson about how come you've got all these Pakistani Africans if you've got strong immigration policy. And she told the story of Australia's recent immigration history. So I'll play the full exchange. Now, this aired on 7 News Spotlight. The whole 1-hour podcast that Tommy recorded with her still has not been published on any of his social medias, not his YouTube, Rumble, or his X account. But this was Tommy's question, and then Pauline's response, and then her clarification later on social media.
What is the immigration policy of Australia? How have you ended up with Pakistanis, Somalis, all of these African problems with violent Africans?
Well, it started in 1973 with Gough Whitlam. So they opened up and got rid of the White Australia policy. Then they started bringing in the different migrants. And a lot of them couldn't speak English, but they learned to speak English. But over the decades, as the governments have changed and different people they've brought in, and a lot of people come into Australia purely for the welfare system.
How do you prevent the
It's the people-
demographical change?
I've said it because I'll stop people coming in from radical Islamic countries and I'll ban the burqa.
So you've got many Muslims in your country who are reliant
You've
on
got
the
about
state.
4%.
You've got 4%?
Yeah, so they do breed. They are having children because, you know what? In the Quran it says Allah will provide. Well, the Allah
Is the
providing
government
is a
of Australia.
taxpayer. Correct.
It's all the people going to work every
Well,
day.
guess what? I've had enough. There are false allegations that I wanted to introduce the White Australia policy. Not the case. Never ever have I advocated that, and I don't believe in it as well. Yes, I've been strong on immigration, bringing the right people in the country in a measured way, and people who want to assimilate and be Australians. Do I want people from certain countries that want to wear the burqa? No. What about those marrying their cousins? No. Sharia law? No. Child marriages? No. So I will advocate that. How do you feel about it?
Now, Tommy asked, how did you end up with all of these Africans and Pakistanis? And, well, she obviously, when you're answering a question, how did Africans and Pakistanis migrate to Australia? Well, they were able to when the White Australia policy ended. So she's just stating an historical fact there, which of course has been spun, but it is worth mentioning that in her maiden speech in 1996, she did praise former Labor leader Arthur Colwell, who was the most hardcore defender of the White Australia policy. So she said, Arthur Colwell was a great Australian and Labor leader. It is a pity that there are not men of his stature sitting on the opposition benches today. Arthur Colwell said Japan, India, Burma, Ceylon, which is now Sri Lanka, and every new African nation are fiercely anti-white and anti-one another. Do we want or need any of these people here? I am one red-blooded Australian who says no and speaks for 90% of Australians. I have no hesitations in echoing the words of Arthur Colwell. She also told Liam Bartlett that she didn't regret, also in her maiden speech, saying that we're in danger of being swamped by Asians. Well, there has been a lot since 1996 of mass Asian immigration to Australia. So again, that is just a fact. But it's also worth pointing out that Liam Bartlett said that Tommy Robinson was racist. He's not. He's not a ethno-nationalist. He is against Islamic immigration, Islamification. And you saw when Pauline continued her answer that her big issue was the spread of Islam, and that's what she talked about in her video response. And of course, Islam is not a race. But you've already seen not just the mainstream media, but the major parties, Liberals, Labor, and the Greens, continue to claim that, well, the way that they've spun it is that she laments the end of the White Australia policy. This was Home Affairs Minister Tony Burqa, or of course we give him that nickname because he's reliant on the Burqa vote to get re-elected in his Western Sydney seat of Watson.
I never thought when I entered Parliament that in my political lifetime anyone who'd been elected to Parliament would be calling for White Australia. I thought we're in a country where everybody just accepted that we had moved on and we were better because we'd moved on.
It's important to recognise that the movement away from the White Australia policy wasn't just the Labor government of Gough Whitlam, it was actually a bipartisan position that began in the 1960s, and that was a good thing, a good thing. Modern Australia is made up of, with the exception of First Nations people, people who've come from all over the world.
And I remember recently listening to former Liberal politicians, Amanda Vanstone and Christopher Pyne, who like to say that it was the Liberal Fraser government that created multiculturalism, and that it was Harold Holt who began to dismantle the White Australia policy. And although that clip of Menzies defending the White Australia policy often gets circulated, that clip, Arthur Calwell was way more hardcore. Now, going back to Pauline's Britain tour, she didn't just get a tour of Luton Town, which is not too far from the City of London. She was going to meet with Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, but he cancelled because of the by-election in Clacton that he caused. They did meet briefly at CPAC GB. So Farage sent his Treasury spokesman, Robert Jenrick, who is used to be the Conservative Immigration Minister. And I was glad that Pauline went for him about, you were the Immigration Minister. You oversaw this mass migration and illegal immigration. Do you accept your part? And he sort of said, well, it was so out of control, there's not much I could do. Well, if Reform wins the next British election, are you going to make amends? Now, Jenrick showed Pauline the London borough of Tower Hamlets, whose population is nearly 40% Muslim, the highest proportion anywhere in England. And Pauline, again, expressed her discomfort about the burqa. She said that her trip had strengthened her desire to protect Australia. She also did a podcast with former Conservative Prime Minister Liz Truss, who introduced her at CPAC GP to a half-empty room. I guess the cost of living crisis in the UK is affecting affordability at these conferences, and they cost probably, I haven't looked at the tickets, but probably £300 to £500, something like that. And Pauline, she said that she didn't want Australia to become like England, but she also said that Australia was so woke when it came to gender self-ID. Albanese said she talked down Australia. She is back now. She was at an event that was hosted by the West Australian, the Nightly's editor-in-chief, Christopher Dorr, which are also owned by Channel 7. Then she unveiled her party's candidate for the West Australian state by-election of Secret Harbour, which has been triggered by the resignation of a Cook government minister. Also, Theresa Van Leischot is standing in that by-election. So One Nation's candidate is gym owner Luke Herdigan, who's responded to posts on his Facebook account from 2019, where he was posting about when he was in a dark place and doing large amounts of cocaine and dealing with mental health problems. So he said that the story I put out there was to help inspire people to be happier and live healthier lives. I think it would really help other people, he said, which it's an inspiring story. And of course, we should want people in politics who've turned their lives around. And of course, we've had former alcoholics as politicians, notably Bob Hawke, albeit alcohol is not illegal yet, but it's addictive like cocaine. So, and of course, we should also apply the Plibersek test. Tanya Plibersek is married to a convicted drug trafficker, and Barnaby Joyce, when he was opposite Tanya Plibersek on Sunrise, said that Pauline has been hanging out in the UK with a convicted criminal. Barnaby, if he wanted to give her a low blow, would say, well, at least she isn't married to one. That would have been quite triggered quite the reaction. Of course, there's been this huge pile on Barnaby Joyce after he told off his dog during his ABC 7:30 interview with Sarah Ferguson. He seems to like going on ABC 7:30 after Pauline's made a big splash. He was on 7:30 after a National Press Club address, and now after a 7 News Spotlight episode. And now this has been spun as that Barnaby's erratic because he stopped to tell off his dog, or there was conspiracies that the dog doesn't even exist. Well, at least he didn't hit the dog, like I've seen someone else on a live stream actually hit a dog. So, in Barnaby Joyce, he put out a statement saying people have been carrying on like I've committed some sort of war crime. And they've also started going after Malcolm Roberts, accusing him of believing in chemtrails during a interview discussion with Graham Hood, that former Qantas pilot, and who doesn't believe in chemtrails. And again, this was spun because Malcolm Roberts says there's no evidence for chemtrails in Australia, but I'm open to evidence. And it's because of the way that Malcolm Roberts talks about topics and says that there's no evidence for this, but I'm open to new evidence. He's evidence-based, but this is being spun that he believes in chemtrails, just like it was when Lisa Jane Spencer asked him if the Bondi terrorist massacre was a false flag. He said, I have no evidence for that. That is the way that he approaches topics. And he called Alex Jones, this was back in an interview in 2023, a beacon of hope. And they're even digging up that Malcolm Roberts, in a letter to Julia Gillard when he was Prime Minister, was using sovereign citizen language. And they've also dug up that when Pauline Hanson appeared to praise Vladimir Putin, where she said that she wishes that there was such a patriotic leader like Putin in Australia. And of course, that was spun as her being a Putin apologist. But she was basically saying that leaders, of course, should be patriots. So I commented about my trip to Thailand, where I saw on public buildings only there were two Thai flags. There was obviously the Thai flag and the Royal Thai flag, because the monarchy is one of the three pillars of Thailand. And I wish that there was public displays back here of patriotism like there is in Thailand. Now, the Liberal Party is considering disciplinary action against Senator Alex Antic for calling Malcolm Roberts a clear thinker and a decent bloke. And there's also been Andrew Bragg, the Shadow Liberal Housing Minister, rebuking Tony Abbott for saying in a John Anderson Media video that multiculturalism has failed and diversity isn't a strength. He is obviously the federal Liberal president now. And there's been a number of Liberal MPs who said it's the party room that sets the policies. Tony Abbott's role is administrative. Now, there's also been a further scrutiny of, in between her podcast interview with Tommy Robinson and her going to CPAC GP, she stopped in Sicily, Italy for a holiday with Gina Reinhardt at the White Lotus Resort. I'm surprised that there wasn't people saying, why did she pick a resort called the White Lotus? That's how ridiculous things are getting now. And Pauline Hanson said that that her trip didn't cost the taxpayers a dime. And although she didn't answer directly, it will be in her register of interest. And she said there are other MPs, including Labor MPs in the Northern Hemisphere, where it's warmer during the winter break. And now, despite all of this, the pylon over the 7 News Spotlight episode, and they're still going on about her National Press Club address, her calling for Australia to be monocultural. Despite all of this, in the latest news poll, Labor, One Nation is back equal with Labor on 30%. The coalition is on 19%. And for particularly the Labor Party to attack Pauline Hanson for hanging out with a billionaire, what about last week, Anthony Albanese hanging out with a billionaire, Vizzy's Anthony Pratt at the Australian Financial Review round table? He was also there with Paul Keating, who this is now deleted from Anthony Albanese's socials. He said that Labor introduced compulsory super. It was Paul Keating, and that Australians should be able to look forward in retirement after a lifetime of hard work. Except Anthony Albanese now wants to use it for his government's pet projects in infrastructure, energy, and housing. So next they'll come for our super because we can't access it until we're at least 60. So particularly union movements control through industry super funds. If you've seen the ads, they basically have the Illuminati symbol. That an industry super funds is one that has unions on the board. But who he cropped out from this post, which is now deleted, was Dan Andrews, the former Victorian Premier, who looks very dishevelled now. Certainly looks very ill. It looked like the most perverse Last Supper, that those images there. And it's certainly Anthony Albanese has generated more chatter now that he has deleted that. But going back to 7 News Spotlight, I think what should have been the biggest talking point from that episode is when Pauline Hanson was back in Brisbane, at the Islamic College of Brisbane, the school selected 3 high achieving female students, one with uncovered hair, one in a hijab, and one in a niqab where only the eyes are showing. And Pauline's discussion with niqab girl, I think, is what should be the biggest focus thing to come out of Spotlight.
Do you want to wear it yourself personally, or does your mother wear it?
My mother wears it, but I chose to wear it. She told me that it's better if I do it when I grow up, but I've always wanted to do it from a young age, and as I grew older to this age, my urge to wear it grew stronger, and yeah, it was my own choice.
Why do you feel you want to wear it?
Because I feel like it's like a way of me strengthening my connection with my God. It kind of makes me feel liberated from social beauty standards, because around me I always see a lot of girls, they get like they're like put down because of the way they look, and wearing it makes me feel like people can't exactly see my face, so they won't judge me based on how I look. They focus more on like other parts of me, like how I talk and like how I interact with other people.
It's your choice. I acknowledge and I accept that. But a lot of women are being forced to actually wear it, when they don't want to.
What do you see when you say Australian way of life, Australian culture?
Would you ever wear a bikini to the beach?
No.
No.
So is that Australian way of life?
So
wearing
that-
a bikini?
It's very much an Australian culture.
So
To wear swimsuits and on the beach and different
If
things.
she doesn't wear
anyway,
it, is she not Australian?
She can choose what she wants to do.
So if I don't follow this kind of Australian culture, would that mean I'm less Australian than anyone who does?
Do you yourself believe that men should have up to, a number of wives?
In Australia, it is not allowed, then I believe that they should follow the Australian law because they choose to live in this country, they should abide by the law. However, if they were in a country where it is allowed to have multiple wives and they're okay with it, then I don't see why there's a problem.
Muslims are coming here, disregarding our law and still having their multiple wives under Sharia law. Do you believe in Sharia law?
Yes.
Do you believe that should be allowed here in Australia?
Not in Australia because it's against the law, but if you look at if it's not just Muslims, if you look at non-Muslim population, there's also men with multiple wives.
But it is occurring here in Australia anyway.
Yeah.
Do you believe that you should be allowed to be married off to whoever parents choose for you?
Yeah. I
do?
don't see why there's a problem with it because my parents know what's best for me. As long as there's a mutual agreement, if the child themselves is fine with it, then I don't see why there's a problem.
Right.
That was very disturbing. And she was handpicked by the Islamic College of Brisbane. Now, Margot in the chat raised a point that many others have pointed out. She said that she doesn't want to be judged by beauty standards, yet she wore heavy eye makeup, and she said that she wants people to focus on what she has to say, but although we can hear her, it's slightly muffled and we can't see her lips move. And it's very clear that she believes that Sharia law, parents marrying off their daughters, men having multiple wives, she all supports that for Islamic countries under Sharia law. But she makes the caveat that it's not part of Australian law. And we have heard similar things from other Islamic leaders who say to Muslims that if you come to Australia, you follow Australian law. But based on what she has said, she clearly thinks that there's no issue of Middle Eastern or African Muslim nations having Sharia law. I think the better question would have been when Pauline Hanson, they questioned her about the bikini. Is she comfortable with women in Australia wearing the bikini? That would have been a much better question. Now, in the whole segment, we hardly heard anything from the girl with her hair out. So they didn't really focus on her much. And the clip that I played of Tony Burker criticising Pauline Hanson on White Australia, he was announcing, along with his multicultural affairs minister, Anne Ali, that the Albanese government had adopted 35 out of 54 recommendations made by his special envoy to combat Islamophobia, Aftab Malak, because they had a special envoy to combat anti-Semitism, Gillian Siegel. Why didn't they have a special envoy to combat Christophobia? I mean, there was that, well, it's had its lease terminated now, but that former Catholic church in Sydney that was turned into an LGBTQI divine playhouse, which had all sorts of mocking, blaspheming against Christianity. So there will be a $66 million for an Islamophobia education task force, which will be looking at teaching preschool children about anti-Muslim racism and discrimination. You can't start them too young. There's also $41.9 million in funding for Muslim groups to improve security at faith-based places, and a new special Australian Federal Police Social Cohesion Team, expanded AFP community liaison teams, new multicultural grants for Muslim women and young people, and Islamophobia training for MPs, public servants, and police and legal professionals. They rejected his recommendation to have a review of counterterrorism laws to see that they're not discriminatory targeting Muslims. Also, universities will now be legally required to prevent and respond to Islamophobia. The implementation of the National Hate Crime Database will be accelerated, and more funding will be allocated for mental health and well-being for Muslim students. And there's another $15 million to deliver a sports centre for Muslim athletes. They definitely segregate athletes, male and female. And they also have, there's the Gallipoli gym in Auburn in Sydney, which has a men-only gym and a woman-only gym. So Muslims having a men-only gym, that's okay, but if Australian nationalists have a men-only gym, that's extremism. So, of course, all of these new announceables, they always include more money, more taxpayers' money.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, last Wednesday, Anthony Albanese announced the establishment of a new Office of Artificial Intelligence, AI, within his Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet to develop new national standards for AI. Now, this isn't the official logo for the Office of AI. I used AI to create a proposed logo for it. I probably should have just written all my talking points for this segment in AI. I see it's something that various Sky News presenters, Chris Kenny and Andrew Bolt, they say this was written by ChatGPT, and they read through it and you would never know that it was done by ChatGPT. I keep getting tongue twisted. They're wanting it to be Chat GDP. In fact, the AI data centers is what kept Australia out of negative GDP in the March quarter. So governments, both federal and state, have been eager to have these AI data centers invest and set up their centers in Australia. But because there is growing anxiety and also community backlash against these AI data centers, he gave a speech at the University of Sydney, which was called AI in Australia's Interests, where he said that a new national framework for AI would be legislated next year. And of course, he used said that it would be the best of everything, greater clarity and speed for approvals, a streamlined process for compliance. He said that we shouldn't treat AI as a threat to good jobs. We must use them as an instrument to help create them. The union movement does want a veto power over job redundancies because of AI, though then I remember Sally McManus saying that if AI can make us have a 4-day work week, then she wouldn't oppose that. Of course, this has been the reason we have high living standards today and don't need to work as hard, don't need to do 12-hour shifts in the mines. Well, they still do that in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, most likely to get all of the minerals for our renewable energy and also for our data centers infrastructure. But obviously there were job losses, creative destruction with the Industrial Revolution, and then the digital revolution there will be with the AI revolution. But Anthony Albanese claiming that AI data centers, they must be a net generator, not net user of electricity, and must build and fund additional renewable energy generation and storage, so there is no price or supply burden on households, and they also must pay for additional water infrastructure project. Of course, we should be swimming in energy and water abundance, but because of the net zero agenda and the no new dams policy, because Tim Flannery said climate change would mean that dams wouldn't be full, I'd be eager to hear your comments in the chat about your thoughts on AI data centers, because they are quite noisy. If you think wind farms are noisy, AI data centers are very noisy, and there's been a huge backlash to them in the United States from both Republicans and Democrats have pushed back against more AI data centers. Obviously, these big warehouses full of computers are not new. Of course, the government built the NSA data center in, I think it was Utah, which of course needs lots of electricity and lots of water. Where do you think this video goes after it's streamed and then stored on YouTube service? It's stored on servers in a warehouse. It doesn't just, it's not stored in the sky. Also, Anthropic wanted a copyright exemption. They instead wanted to pay into a fund for creatives because they want they want to use creators' content to train their AI models, because of course they can create music now. AI, the Liberals created AI diss track last federal election saying Albo's gotta leave. Margot says they consume a lot less energy and water, wouldn't want one near me. So AI firms will have to negotiate with rights holders to train their AI programs. Now, as I previously mentioned, the reason why, and I don't think that this is going to halt the AI data center rollout in Australia because, well, basically because we are in a technical recession, particularly Labor governments, they grasp onto any technological investment as, well, how we're going to try and kickstart economic growth because we're in a productivity, it's stagnant here. So there's the whole quantum computing, that there's going to be a new computer revolution, which Australia is investing in and going to be the beneficiary of. And it's also argued that these AI data centers are important for our national security, so they're not based in China. Now, Angus Taylor, he said that the Office of AI is an office with an office, but the Greens, they are the most hardcore against AI data centers. They want a moratorium until there are proper AI laws that protect privacy, so our personal information doesn't get mined by AI. Though if you use AI models, you're sort of giving away some you're feeding at what you're thinking if you're asking AI a question. So they want a moratorium until there are proper laws to protect privacy, jobs, environment, and sovereignty. And also David Pocock, who is, you'd call him a teal adjacent. He's also skeptical of the data centers as well.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
On Friday night, the Victorian Liberal Party Administrative Committee met and unanimously voted to disendorse Moira Deeming as a candidate for the Western Metropolitan region of the Legislative Council at the upcoming state election, which means it was a 17-0 vote. So the Victorian Liberal Party, there's finally unity, well, to disendorse Moira Deeming, but it was also a vote of confidence in leader Jess Wilson, who said that she should apologise to Matthew Guy for claiming that she put her in a headlock. We've all seen the CCTV footage of them seated at a table at Macedonian community event back on May 23rd. He's trying to tell her something, but the loud music, so she leans over to try and hear, and then basically, so he doesn't fall over, sort of gets some to support him on her back to whisper in her ear, and he does the same to her staffer who didn't go to the police, claiming that Matthew Guy assaulted him. It was only Moira Deeming. And so the disendorsement happened because she withdrew her Supreme Court action against the Liberal Party. And she said the court delay had given her time to review all the facts and learn the difference between a headlock and a collar tie grip, and published a letter by former UFC fighter Elvis Sinosovic, who said this was his judgment based on the CCTV footage, which is I'd never heard of a tie grip until it was mentioned by, he's known as Elvis the King, the People's King on X, because he runs a martial arts gym called King's Academy, and he's also a former Libertarian Party candidate. And now Peter Credlin, who is the husband of the Victorian Liberal Party president, Brian Loughnane, who voted to disendorse her. She published on her return from Britain and Europe and the Herald Sun, Moira Deeming squandered chance to reset by refusing to apologise. Moira Deeming once fought for an apology and won, and she now faces consequences for denying one to Matthew Guy. And she says, when you get it wrong, you own up and apologise, or you bear the consequences, as Pizzuto did, and now as Deeming has. And she writes, as a lawyer, I've never subscribed to the view that every woman must be believed. No, every woman and man is entitled only to be heard. The question of being believed is one for the justice system, be that a judge or jury. Well, Victoria Police said that no offence was detected. And Credlin said, I wish Moira and her family well for the future. There's no doubt she has had a turbulent few years in the public eye. It is a sad ending to Moira Deeming's political career. I believe that she should have apologised, and these TERFs who are still defending her on X are doing their cause no favours. They are just sounding like the Me Too feminists who, remember, tried to argue during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings that women are entitled to their own truth. No, there is evidence and facts. And thankfully, there was that CCTV footage to exonerate Matthew Guy. And so it didn't turn into a he said, she said. You also have to remember that with TERFs, the F still stands for feminists. The main difference between them and the third wave feminists is that the TERFs, obviously by their name, you don't believe that trans women are women, and most TERFs are also swerves, which are sex worker exclusionary radical feminists. Now, Credlin delivered a monologue on a return from Sky News, basically repeating her Herald Sun column, and the Sky News and News Corp opinion is all against her. Anthony Galloway wrote in The Australian that Moira Deeming says that we should base things on objective facts. Men can't become women, but she was arguing us to believe something that wasn't evident from the released CCTV footage. I was also disappointed with Dr. Gillian Spencer for backing Moira Deeming on social media, especially after her victory over Children's Health Queensland. They dropped their disciplinary proceedings against her as part of a confidential settlement because they suspended her from her job in 2023 after publicly questioning their gender affirmation model of prescribing puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones to children presenting with gender dysphoria. Additionally, the Australian Health Practitioners Regulation Agency stopped its investigation into her sharing social media posts critical of transgender ideology. So she is free to practice as a psychologist. She's now employed in private practice, no longer at Children's Health Queensland. They did publish as part of the settlement this statement where they said that Dr. Spencer is being a strong advocate for change in Queensland in the model of care for children and adolescents experiencing gender dysphoria. One of the features of the clinical approach that Dr. Spencer has sought in the delay in medical interventions for such patients until adulthood, including puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones, because they are serious decisions regarding their body and long-term health. So Dr. Spencer said that her name has been cleared. She can hold her head up high. She was represented by John Steinoff of the Human Rights Law Alliance, who's been a guest on WilmsFront previously, which is the analogy that he used is that it's the Liam Hemsworth to the Australian Christian lobby's Chris Hemsworth. They're the little brother to the Australian Christian lobbies. So John Steinoff said that it's vindication for Dr. Spencer and the concerns that she had for care of children, and that doctors can now practice without being coerced into ideological positions. In 2025, the Queensland Health Minister Tim Nicholls banned the prescribing of puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones in patients under 18 in Queensland public hospitals. There's a loophole, though, that puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones can still be prescribed to children in private health settings, and the Crisafulli government, David Crisafulli, wants to avoid culture wars, which is maybe why the Queensland government hasn't rolled back gender self-ID, which New South Wales was the last state to introduce. And the Daily Telegraph did a front page splash about 1 year after gender self-ID was introduced in New South Wales. And so their tabloid headline was Chick Chick Boom, 3 men a day switch to female via simple service New South Wales admin process. Of course, Chick Chick Boom, that was that famous when that I can't remember her name, but she pretended to Channel 9 that she'd witnessed a gangland shooting, and so her impersonation of a gunshot was Chick Chick Boom. So it's 1035, and the next page was as easy as wham bam thank you ma'am, and it features comments from Sal Grover and Rachel Wong, who have not commented publicly on Moira deeming, which I think is wise. Focus on activism. It will be difficult for Moira to be elected with a minor party like Family First, who have defended her, or the Libertarians, as since One Nation. Pauline Hanson was pretty clear that she wouldn't have her, as the Allen Labor government is abolishing group voting tickets in the upper house, which means that Victoria was the final state. If you voted one above the line, your preferences would go to a what's called a group voting ticket. The party would decide where your preferences go. So with them being abolished, it means that voters decide preferences, but there won't be, through preference whispering, Glenn Drury, the ability of parties to win a seat to get from 1% to 16.67% based on preferences. Of course, all the attention from the Liberal Party now, they are not dwelling on, now that Moira is being disendorsed, there's no plan to expel her from the party room. They are going to be focused on defeating the Allen Labor government, which, well, will it be the Allen Labor government for how long? Because the Minister for Health Infrastructure broke ranks with her over big build corruption, wants assurances that on health infrastructure projects that contractors and subcontractors are not being hired through improper processes. Jacinta Allen has announced new laws to unmask trolls, which, well, does that mean we can find out if the identity of PR guy 17 is actually who came out and claimed that they were PR guy 17? That account's gone very quiet. And Jacinta Allen has also apologised for her role in cancelling the Commonwealth Games, which starts in Glasgow on Thursday, though it'll start Friday Australian time.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Over in Britain, Andy Burnham is the new British Prime Minister. He was elected British Labour Party leader unopposed at the party conference. He came on to the theme of true faith by new order. He wants the British people to put true faith in him to bring about a new order for Britain. He is going to unveil a 10-year plan to change the country, spoken like a true socialist, because remember, a communist China, they still have their 5-year plans. That's what the Soviet Union used to have. He is promising to implement things that weren't in Keir Starmer's 2024 election manifesto. Of course, he didn't contest that election for the House of Commons. He was the mayor of Greater Manchester and has basically become Prime Minister through the back door, through the Makerfield by-election, through the resignation of a Labour MP. He basically wants to, well, turn the clock back to the 1970s, back to old Labour. So there was new Labour under Tony Blair, which they abandoned the pledges to nationalise industries, but Andy Burnham wants to nationalise the water and other critical essential supply industries. So it's basically Corbynism, but without the love for Chavez and Castro. He has hired a hope, not hate, former director, Matthew McGregor, as his director of political strategy in number 10 Downing Street. And they have deleted their profile on Anne Widdecombe after her murder at her home in Devon. Now, you will remember last week that the Cornwall and Devon Police Assistant Chief Constable Matt Longman, who sounds a lot like Andrew Lawrence's Sergeant Detective Peter Pisspot from Twat Valley Police, and he actually released a video after last week's show as that character, and it basically was pretty much the same as what Matt Longman had said. So they first said that they'd arrested a 26-year-old white British man. Did we say he was white? On suspicion of murder, but because they discovered that she'd been bludgeoned to death a day earlier, he was released and was no longer part of their investigation. And so then they arrested a 28-year-old white British man from Rotherham, who has now been named as Joshua Kerry. Now, this is what he looked like about 3 years ago with the beard and the glasses, but this is what he looks like in the CCTV footage that was released to the Sun newspaper. According to neighbours they described him as a loner who didn't leave his house often and had learning difficulties. So he was seen as leaving his home in the car with a stick at 7:51 a.m. on the Wednesday to travel 300 miles from Rothran to Devon. So Matt Rothran originally said that there was no evidence to suggest that it was politically motivated, though shortly after last week's program, they announced that counter-terrorism police had taken over because of new evidence, which apparently is common for fast-moving in investigations. And so apparently they found, this is not confirmed by police, but was again reported in the Sun newspaper. So on his wall, there was apparently newspaper clippings about Nigel Farage and Reform UK. And sources told The Sun that the material included articles about the party's hardline immigration policy, and the suspect harboured a deep dislike of the party and its leader and its platform. And allegedly, they found communist literature in his bedroom. Well, I have a copy of the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital. Of course, I'm not a communist. It's just reading that for the lols, basically. Though a lot of actual communists haven't actually bothered to read a lot of the communist literature. Now, a lot of people have bought this narrative who did believe it was politically motivated and seem to basically accept that it's case closed now. He is going to appear in court today, but I'm not convinced. He does still sound like a patsy. I hope that the trial there is open reporting of his murder trial. Unlike there was not much reporting of the trial of the 3 Ukrainian rent boys who arsoned Keir Starmer's properties, there was very limited reporting of that. Apparently, the coroner or the pathologist still hasn't determined Anne Widdecombe's exact cause of death, which is strange to me because obviously there was the stick bludgeoning. Like, obviously a 78-year-old woman is quite frail and defenseless. It's a horrible way to die, even if you didn't like her politics. And now there has another arrest has been of Heather Herbert, a transgender Aberdeen University employee who has been arrested and charged for posting online wishing that Widdecombe's death was that she hoped that it was a extremely painful death and it was good news. So Heather Herbert's posts were reported to Police Scotland, who said the 50-year-old had now been arrested and charged. Now, there's a joke going around that it's Francis Foster's a drag alter ego who's the co-host of Trigonometry. And I saw Constantine Kissin's post, who opposes Heather Herbert's arrest because Anne was an ardent defender of free speech, even for those she disagreed with, and she wouldn't have wanted this. And the Free Speech Union is a offering to defend Heather Herbert. Now, they refer to Heather Herbert by biological male, him, his pronouns. Now, there have been a lot of people being piled on in the comments for calling Heather Herbert a she. And again, this is my problem with ultra turfism like Kelly J. Keane, who actually doesn't care that Heather Herbert has been arrested. There's some who say what is good for the goose is good for the gander, but no, there's principles of free speech. It's free speech that even you disagree with, and saying quite vile things about the recently deceased shouldn't be a crime. Like, I've celebrated deaths in the past. I celebrated Madeleine Albright, the former US Secretary of State's death, saying ding dong, the witch is dead, because she said that US sanctions against Iraq that had led to the death of 500,000 Iraqi children was a price worth paying. It's just a saying. You're not supposed to speak ill of the dead. It shouldn't be a law. And yes, freedom of speech also includes the right, contrary to what ultra-turfs say, to call Heather Herbert a she. You're allowed to believe that Heather Herbert, she is a woman. That's also part of free speech. Now, it has sort of gone it's down the headlines, the murder of Anne Widdecombe, which was not the case when Labor MP Jo Cox was murdered. We often hear about, she's the most talked about when we hear about violence against terrorism against politicians. We hear less about Sir David Amos, the Conservative MP who was murdered by an Islamist during what's termed a constituent surgery, which is not a physical surgery. It's basically a meet and greet. So we had it's what's called in the UK a dead cat strategy. So Shabana Mahmood, who has kept her job as Home Secretary under Andy Burnham, commented on the Muslim Ijtima in Barnum, attended by over 10,000 Muslims, and said it ended early after a credible extreme right-wing terrorism-related threat to their lives of those present. 12 individuals have now been arrested as part of the investigation led by counter-terrorism police. She hasn't updated this to say that they have now been released. All they did was fly a drone over it. It wasn't a drone that had bombs on it. It was just your standard drone that you can purchase from a tech shop. Now, Reform MPs have said that there should be, well, especially after Anne Widdecombe's murder, more security for Reform MPs. And Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform, criticised Shabana Mahmood for this diversion tactic. But then I couldn't believe that Richard Tice met with the Sikh Federation in Parliament. It was important to stand with the Sikh community and condemn the recent hate crime and violence. That's basically saying that after a Muslim attack, remember the murder of Lee Rigby, a British soldier, by an Islamist. Whenever there's an Islamist attack, it's always talked about the backlash against Muslims. Well, we heard the same thing after Vikram Digwa was convicted of murdering Henry Novak with his Sikh knife. There were all these Sikh leaders coming out saying we should have the right to carry knives, and there's all this backlash and hate against us. And the Reform deputy leader, he buys into that. And this is in a week where we had Vikram Digwa's mum, Kiran Kaur, sentenced to 3 years in prison for assisting her son hide the murder weapon. Apparently, she had to have a Punjabi interpreter at court. There is still because it was also Digwa's father and brother who also conspired to cover up the crime. They haven't been punished for that yet.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Donald Trump, he presented the World Cup to Spain, who defeated Argentina 1-0. It was at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. And now Donald Trump, he lingered on stage after presenting the World Cup to the Spanish men's football team. He didn't basically stay on stage and celebrate with them like he did with Chelsea last year after they won the FIFA Club World Cup. And now, obviously, it was people wondered how Trump would be like since Spain won, and he'd been with a short trade war with that country and its Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez. I wonder if his nickname is Dirty Sanchez after that sex position. And, of course, the pro-Israel and Zionists were backing Argentina as its President Javier Milei is a ardent pro-Israel Zionist and wept at the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, and Sanchez is pro-Palestine, and one of its two African stars, Lamine Yamal, when Barcelona won its La Liga title in Spain, at the parade had a Palestine flag. He identifies as a Muslim, even though he has a bikini-clad influencer girlfriend. So she's yes, into the bikinis that Pauline Hanson wants to defend, rather than a hijab, which his grandmother wears, because he was raised by his grandmother. Because his dad is younger than me. Like, this became father at 15. I digress. Also on stage during the World Cup trophy presentation, because the 2026 FIFA World Cup was also co-hosted with Canada and Mexico, there was the Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and the Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney. Now, I don't know if there was something that went wrong between Trump and Carney that day, but now Trump has hit Canada with further 50% tariffs, which he says is for discriminatory treatment on American alcohol, dairy, and automotive. And he's also saying it's for compensation for the wildfire smoke that's coming across the US from Ontario. So, but of course, it's the US consumers that pay for tariffs, not the Canadians. So Trump, last week it was the trade war with Spain. He threatened to cut off all trade with Spain. This time it's back to Canada. But what certainly is continuing, and since Trump and Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu started their war on Iran. Last week, he said that the memorandum of understanding with Iran was terminated and called their leaders scum. So there have been massive US strikes on Iran. Now, despite the fact that Trump has claimed that Iran's military has been significantly depleted, it's 3 US soldiers were killed by an Iranian strike at a US base in Jordan, and there have been nearly 100 American servicemen who've been injured in multiple Iranian airstrikes on bases throughout the Middle East. So Iran is able to still inflict significant damage. The Strait of Hormuz, they've said it's now closed. I have noticed that petrol has climbed 10 cents in the Frankston Mornington Peninsula area when I've been driving around, seeing the petrol prices is now up to $1.76 for unleaded 91, and diesel is now well over $2 a litre. And also now the Houthis in Yemen, who are Iranian-backed rebels, have announced a naval blockade on Saudi Arabia, targeting its shipping through the Red Sea, aiming to disrupt the other path of their oil exports. Of course, there's a pipeline that can bypass, because Yemen is to the south of Saudi Arabia, so they can bypass it and they're part of the Red Sea. Though there's also another pipeline in the UAE which can bypass the Strait of Hormuz, which is obviously they're wanting to expand these pipelines. Now, the Houthis have accused so there's been basically a truce for 4 years between the Houthis and Saudi Arabia, and so the strike on the Houthis have said this is in response to Saudi restrictions on Yemeni ports and plus an attack on an airport. There was a Saudi-led blockade in the 2010s that lasted years under the Obama presidency and the Trump presidency, which led to a lot of starving Yemeni children, which of course only strengthened the Houthis' stranglehold over the Yemeni people, because, well, it's taught them to hate Saudi Arabia and the United States, just like the remaining children in Gaza are now being taught to hate the Israelis and the United States. It's going to be a self-fulfilling cycle. Now, Israel hasn't joined these recent strikes on Iran. They're just about to go into election mode. But certainly, I don't think that we are going to go to a economic doomsday, a petrocalypse. Like I said, there's 10 cents between now and last week. That's in the grand scheme of things. That's not a huge fluctuation there as well. Though in the United States, though, gas, as they call it, hit $4 a gallon. And Donald Trump, the further this goes on, it looks like it's going to be another forever war, just like Russia-Ukraine is turning into a forever war. It's not going to end in time for the midterms, which means, well, the Democrats will take the House, but also the Senate. They've just got to get another candidate for the Senate in Maine, because, well, that guy with the swastika tattoo withdrew after there was a Me Too allegation against him. And then also in the debate, there's that trans woman who claims can menstruate through their ass. Well, if your ass is bleeding, please go to the emergency room.
This is WilmsFront, brought to you by the Unshackled.net.
Now, before we finish, so you may have seen some ads on, if you still watch TV or online. So next Monday, July the 27th, there is going to be a Oz Alerts emergency text message around 2 p.m. So to test if there's a disaster, they're going to send you a test message. Monica Schmidt, I've heard her claim that you can turn it off in your phone, or I don't know if you turn your phone off, you can avoid it. It's certainly still going to ping if it's on silent. We'll see if there's a way. Maybe try turning off your phone at 2 o'clock to see if it still just jolts back to life at 2 p.m. Make sure that you're not you're not near any sort of high-powered devices, maybe. And also we've got Census Night on Tuesday, August 11, because our data on our diversity, all of the religions, languages spoken at home, all the data on that is 5 years old. So we'll get some fresh data to just see how much the face of Australia has changed in the past 5 years. Anna says it's easy to turn the alerts off. Well, we'll all find out next Monday, and I'll of course bring you a report on it on the next WilmsFront Snapshot News program. Now, I recorded some new reports from Tiger Mountain with Richard Wollstonecroft, actually here in the Unshackled studio. So the first one, talking about Lindsay Graham in hell, that's been published. So there'll be another one on Anne Widdecombe's murder coming up, and also a Nigel Farage up against, as Richard calls him, bin face, fuck face, cunt, fuck face, Doctor Who reject character. Now, remember, please consider supporting the Unshackled and Unshackled Productions. So you can do so by signing up for a premium membership over at the unshackled.net/membership. You can also support us over on Substack at the unshackled.substack.com/subscribe. That's where also you can get alerts for upcoming Unshackled productions like WilmsFront live shows. I also post them on Telegram, Gab, Facebook, and X. And also I'm a contributor to Reality Check Radio. It's a weekday Oz Bites newsletter. We can sign up to at biteme.news. And I am also have my weekly Wilms report, fortnightly Wilms report with Paul Brennan on RCR on its breakfast program there. You can see the archive here. So thank you so much for your company once again. I will see you in a week's time. So please, everyone, try to stay warm. It's still a brutally cold winter, particularly here in Melbourne. I guess hell does freeze over. It'd be great if we could afford, like all the politicians on the taxpayer dime, the Pauline Hanson excluded, go to the warm northern hemisphere for summer holidays, but we've just got to wait out for our own summer here. Good night, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to WilmsFront. Visit timwilms.com to view the archive of episodes, and keep visiting theunshackled.net to view all our shows, and to keep up with the latest real news and analysis.